From producing automobiles in 90 days to delivering some of the greatest models of all time, Ford has been nothing short of remarkable. At the same time that Ford was about to unveil the iconic 390 horsepower supercharged Terminator Cobra, another one-of-a-kind Mustang was being clandestinely built, which could have changed the outcome. The experimental Mustang's new benchmark for four-cylinder performance was an all-aluminum 351.5 cubic inch V10 engine, which replaced the new modular four-door V8. Here is the backstory of the new OSS 351, the world-deprived Mustang with a mind-blowing V10 engine. Ford Skunk Works has produced some very outlandish works over the years. Whether it's the incredible 427 sock that was built in 90 days, or the clandestine rebirth of the classic GT40, it's safe to say that Ford has always had something spectacular cooking in the background. The early 2000s were no exception. An additional unique Mustang was being secretly constructed that would have altered the course of events, just as Ford was ready to reveal the legendary 390 horsepower supercharged Terminator Cobra, an icon in its own regard. The experimental Mustang's new benchmark for four-cylinder performance was an all-aluminum 351.5 cubic inch V10 engine, which replaced the new modular four-door V8. Here is the backstory of the new OSS 351, the world-deprived Mustang with a mind-blowing V10 engine. If you were a proud owner of a Ford truck in the late 90s or early 2000s, you might recall that about this time. Ford introduced their 6.8-liter Triton V10 engine, specifically designed for big trucks. A lot of trucks used this V10, which was basically just a two-cylinder version of the Ford 5.4-liter single overhead cam V8. As a V10, it has the same general sound as the V10 that would have powered the new Boss 351 prototype. But the two engines couldn't have been more different. It was inevitable that the new Boss 351, designed to provide giant killer performance in a Mustang, would have poor handling and a hefty price tag due to incorporation of a 650-pound V10 into the then-current Mustang platform. Launched in 1979, the standard Fox body chassis was the last gasp for the new Edge generation of Mustang. When the new Boss 351 prototype project began in 2002, it was effectively the end of an era. Additionally, they aimed to make a grand exit in order to meet the task of developing a power plant that could rival supercars. The small team of engineers at Ford returned to the drawing board and designed a new V10. At the time, Ford was all about the modular V8 engine, installing it into Mustangs and Crown Vics alike. The 281 cubic inch 4.6-liter motor was available in two primary configurations. The first, with a single overhead cam, was the workhorse V8 featured in Crown Vics and Mustang GTs, and it produced 260 horsepower when new. Specialty Mustangs, such as the Cobras and the Mach 1, the latter of which I am fortunate enough to own, were the only ones to receive the aluminum dual overhead cam variant. The new V10 was built on these 4.6 liters, with two overhead cams and 4 valves per cylinder, which produced over 300 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque. These engines were significantly more rev-happy than the older ones. Money was the only issue. Things had to be done on a tight budget because Ford was unwilling to invest heavily in this project and its new experimental V10 engine plant. In the end, with this in mind, Ford's engineering team chopped up two aluminum 4.6-liter V8 blocks and welded them together to form a new 10-cylinder 4.6 that had a displacement of 5.8-liter or 351 cubic inches, as was the case with the cylinder heads. This cycle would hold true for the bulk of the engine's development. To adapt the 5.4-liter dual overhead cam V8 Cobra R head castings to the new 10-cylinder mill, they had the necessary modifications. The Cobra R, Ford's most powerful naturally aspirated modular V8, served as a testbed for the new V10, giving up its internals, manifold, and just about anything else that needed cutting and tweaking. To round out the hardware package, this prototype also featured bespoke billet cams and a crankshaft. The software tweaking side of things then became problematic. You see, the current V10 electronic control unit was incompatible with this new V10 because it was built on the short deck 4.6 liter of the Mustang and not the Triton V10. This created quite a problem. The cost of a replacement ECU was too high. In the end, what were the engineers at Ford up to? Somehow, they deduced that it would be possible to make it work by taking two V10 Triton ECUs and tricking them into thinking they were only controlling 5 cylinders apiece. The end outcome is 426 horsepower at 6,500 RPM and 400 pound-feet of torque at around 5,000 RPM. That was a huge deal for naturally aspirated cars in the early 2000s, particularly when contrasted with the 385 horsepower LS6 engine featured in the Corvette Z06. Even without further modifications to the heads and cams, Ford's new V10 probably had additional power that could have been extracted using the superior ECU technology, thus widening the gap between it and its rivals. Now that this experimental V10 was complete, it was time to put it into action and demonstrate its capabilities to Ford's upper management. Fortunately, Ford was about to send the test meal of a Cobra R Mustang to the crusher. It was an ideal candidate for the transplant of this new V10, as it already had a number of Cobra parts and had undergone some dubious modifications to accommodate the new 10-cylinder. The transplant in the Cobra R met with success. In support of the rev-hungry, Ford had a functional prototype built on their best-equipped Mustang chassis. The transmission was a 6-speed manual, while the rear end was a 3.83 one-posse traction. This new Boss 351 annihilated the Cobra R and the 2003-2004 Supercharged Terminator Cobras in the quarter mile, effortlessly clocking sub-2 seconds. It also demonstrated superior straight-line speed. In terms of its handling characteristics and turns, I can't locate much information, but I would think it was akin to a stock Cobra R, which was the Mustang's performance crown jewel in the early 2000s. The outside was the nicest aspect. Looking at this vehicle from the outside would give you no idea what was lying under the hood. The prototype resembled a standard silver GT Mustang with a few tweaks, such as a Cobra R hood and saline wheels. However, the secret was revealed with just a single throttle crack. That was a very unusual 4.6. Even Ford's upper management was impressed enough with the V10's performance for them to advocate for the creation of a larger displacement prototype, which could be used in future high-performance vehicles, like the Shelby GR1 concept, despite the prototype's comparatively modest budget. Unfortunately, the plan never materialized, and by the mid-2000s, Ford had grown tired of the V10 engine architecture altogether, leaving just the lovably dubbed Boss 351 prototype. When you consider the Mustang as it is now, with its 480 horsepower available from the magnificent high-revving Coyote V8, you can't help but wonder what the vehicle would have looked like with 2 extra cylinders if the V10 had survived and been upgraded to a 6.2-liter high-winding V10 with 600 horsepower or more. I believe this Boss 351 will be remembered not only as a rare prototype, but also as the first in a long line of unusual V10-flavored performance horses. Finally, from making cars in only 90 days to providing some of the best models ever, Ford's history is characterized by incredible accomplishments. As an example of Ford's commitment to innovation, the new OSS 351 Mustang's Tail stands out within this legacy. With its revolutionary all-aluminum 351.5 cubic inch V10 engine, this experimental Mustang was a radical break from the norm. Ford engineers overcame financial limitations to build a performance prototype that offered a new vision for the Mustang. The Boss 351 made an unforgettable impression on the world of automobiles, even though it was only a prototype in the end. Its remarkable straight-line speed and sub-2-second quarter-mile speeds displayed the performance capabilities of the V10 engine architecture. The Boss 351 prototype is a reminder of the Mustang's potential and a window into a different future. Even if Ford eventually stopped focusing on the V10, we can't help but speculate on the unrealized potential as we consider the Mustang's development through the years. What if the V10 had survived, evolved into a high-winding behemoth with even more performance potential? The Boss 351 is a symbol of the unrealized potential in the automotive industry. It makes people think about all the cool things that could have been. That's it for today. And now, We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Do subscribe to the channel if you like our content. We will catch you in the next one.